Google session-based exploratory testing, and you'll come up with really interesting articles. I highly recommend reading those articles because there are other ways of organizing your exploration, and we just happen to not follow that particular model. When it comes to how do you account for this in your velocity, we've decided as a matter of convention that charters are 0-point stories. So the way that we do velocity, bugs count as 0, chores are technical tasks that the engineering side of the team decides that they need to do. Those count as 0. The only thing that gets points are essentially the value stories that the product manager asked for. And that might seem unfair, but what we're really trying to calculate is if we look at on aggregate, on average, how much value can that team deliver, and everything else is just, it's going to drive the number lower, but lower isn't worse. Like you would never, ever, ever go, well, your team did 52 points this week and your team did 32, so obviously there's something wrong with you. Like that you don't do that ever. It's just a mechanism that allows you to have some level of predictability, and so by making everything that's not value have 0 points, we get that level of predictability.
So everywhere I've been, there's always like an infinite amount of bugs, and some of them, like not like constantly bugs, like new bugs all the time, but there's some bugs that are like, you know, we don't need to fix this right now, but we should fix it. So how do you, and then you said bugs are at the top priority. So how do you, that means that there's no bugs in the list before you start features. So how do you manage that?
Well, so we don't hold, I would love to say that we hold strictly to the bugs always go at the top and you don't do anything new until you fixed all the bugs. But the reality is sometimes there are bugs that, for whatever reason, it's just not as important as this feature that we're going to be delivering next. And there are very good strategic reasons for that. But one of the advantages of having the bugs in the same system as everything else is that you can start to see that we have bug. You start scrolling through the things and there's like 5,000 bugs. That's an opportunity to take a step back and go, oh, something's going terribly, terribly wrong. Why would we have this many bugs? So I'm sure there was another aspect to your question that I am completely forgetting right now. I got a little bit stuck on infinite bugs and was having PTSD on my previous experience as a quality engineering manager at the end of a cycle. And doing bug scrub meetings, and see, I'm twitching. So could you ask your question again, and I'll stop twitching?
Yes. So there's just some bugs that you never really get to. There's always at least some bugs on the list.
Oh, well, then delete it. Like, seriously.
Or
if
at
you're
least,
never gonna fix it, delete it out of the backlog.
Maybe not never, but like not today or not this week, but next week. So
you're gonna do it in 6 months?
I guess, yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Then delete it. Like if it's really important, it'll keep coming back. You presumably have a separate support system of some kind so that you can get feedback from the actual users of your system. And if they tell you it's important, then you're going to end up prioritizing it higher. But if, as a PM, you're looking at this and going, I think that the possibility of somebody hitting this is incredibly low. I think that the impact if they hit this is incredibly low. I cannot justify prioritizing this high enough that we are likely to get to this anytime in the next 6 months. At this point, it's now just a distraction. It's clutter. So get it out of your backlog so you don't have the clutter.
I have a question.
Yes.
Since we left your slides behind. So Cloud Foundry is a very complex project, as you say. When you do exploratory testing, where do you do it? Do you find it valuable to model Cloud Foundry somehow? And if so, what size is that model? And how closely does it map to the actual Cloud Foundry? And yeah, that sort of thing. I'm very interested in modeling such complex systems because we face the same challenge here, modeling Wikipedia, you know, or do you just simply test in production? I mean, what's the answer to the size of the environment in which you do exploratory testing?
Well, yes to all of the above. We are in a slightly different circumstance than the Wikimedia Foundation because I don't think that I could put my own Wikimedia up on my own hardware. Could I? Do you ship that? Okay. Well, do you care about testing all of the various configurations in which somebody might do that? Right. I have to care about that. So let's take Elastic Runtime is the core of our system. It's the thing that knows how to take requests to deploy an app and then deploy the app across multiple instances, across multiple executors. And that's like the core of the app. do not at the moment model all of the possible permutations in which somebody might stand up one of those, but as a matter of practice between the various teams that would either be responsible for producing the Elastic Runtime Core, or we have a release engineering team that's responsible for packaging that for our commercial distribution, and we have got a team that produces the GUI-based installer that knows how to deploy a Cloud Foundry. Between those three teams, we end up testing in multiple different configurations, and then when we are exploring, we're going to be exploring in the context of each of those teams. So we don't do like a big modeling session, let's spend 2 weeks trying to model all the things, and then we dig in to explore. Instead, it's a lot more tactical. It's a much more of a point kind of thing where we say, all right, look, here's a set of risks we're worried about. Let's express those as charters. You're going to be within this particular team that owns the backlog that those charters went into. You're going to be doing whatever you need to do to get the answers to those questions. Like the one about deploying was one from the Elastic Runtime team. What's the right order in which to deploy? So maybe take what you imagined we might do and then shrink it down to an actually accomplishable size of chunk of thing that you could do in a few days. Does that answer your question? Okay. Chris says yes. Yes.
Also, I would like to know about role of logs in your system. Which tools do you use? Do you use like Splunk or any other open source tools for this?
So the role of logs in our system, and the example of the tool you gave was, I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
Pretty much I'm trying to understand how much you as QA use logs, what tools do you use pretty much to monitor environments and troubleshoot find issues.
Okay, so logs certainly enable us to pinpoint issues, and we use them frequently, especially when we start seeing problems in our staging. We've got a, so to back up a little bit, we have our hosted version on AWS. It's at run.pivotal.io. We have staging environments that are slightly scaled down, but essentially the same exact configuration of that. So a fair amount of testing is happening in those staging environments, even for the open source. So even though the open source is it's a separate thing, having those staging environments available for testing the open source, super handy. So we've got two kinds of logs in our system. We have system logs, and we've got an internal mechanism within the system, which was the syslog aggregator, and I need to go learn more about exactly what we've done with the new generation of things, but essentially a syslog aggregator. So you've got a gazillion VMs all within your cluster, and getting the logs off of those VMs at the operating system level, that's the syslog aggregator. And then we've got the application log aggregator. So you're an application developer. You should never, ever, ever have access to the system logs, obviously, because that's the VM that's running the system. But you should have access to standard out for your own application. That needs to be aggregated across multiple instances. So two types of logging, application and system, and the mechanism by which we get those is built into Cloud Foundry. It's part of the feature of the product. And we were using, oh, I'm just going to get it wrong, but some combination of Kibana, Elasticsearch, and some other stuff to enable us to make it much easier to search within those logs to find the log entries that were right around a particular anomaly that we detected. No Splunk? Yeah, we're not using Splunk internally. I mean, application developers who use our platform certainly can hook up Splunk, but we're not using it ourselves. Yeah, if you are standing up your own Cloud Foundry, you could stand up a similar kind of thing. We do use Datadog for monitoring, which turns out to be really important for when you see a thing spike that shouldn't spike, and then you can go search in the logs to figure out what was going on and why did that thing spike.
Yeah, sorry if you've covered this, but I just want to clarify like what you see exploratory testing as providing, or how you would differentiate it from other forms of testing. You know, because I don't know, I'm sure you have, you know, your unit and your integration and everything, but
I totally forgot to say, I wrote this book. And I'm leaving a copy of it with the Wikimedia Foundation here. Chris will know where to find it, so if you're here, you can browse through this, and there's a bunch of stuff. But the short answer to your question is that exploratory testing is a practice of simultaneously learning about the behavior of the system while designing test cases and executing them so that you can immediately observe those results and use that to steer you to the next little experiment that you're going to do. So it's like a series of experiments. And by contrast, a very traditional view, and when I say traditional, I'm realizing I've been at the DevOps Enterprise Conference this week. It's down by the airport, and every single talk has been about DevOps, and somehow it's had the words test and quality in sufficient number that people have been saying we should create a drinking game around this, so it's been kind of entertaining. But what's been even more entertaining is realizing that I often throw up this straw man of traditional QA, and I'm going to have to stop doing that because nobody does that anymore. But in the old straw man of traditional QA, you would have like these manual test procedures, and if you printed it out, it would be a stack of paper this big, and it's a very script-oriented thing that you, dear tester, you're going to do this, and then this, and then this. Click this button, enter this value into this field, watch the form load. I hate my life. Click this button, enter this value into this field. That level of manual regression testing is the antithesis